Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Jen.
And we welcome you here today to the 6th webinar in the AHPA NDIS certification series. Today we'll be looking at the 4th practice standard, which is called Provision of Supports, and it's looking at the safeguards in this one. And we're also going to go back and look at risk management, which was part of Standard 2, Governance and Operational Management. So I'm going to just share the screen with you and we'll have a look at the website. We are here. I'll just take you back a step. So certification overview. And we're in here, the 4th practice standard, Provision of Supports. Okay, so Jen.
So yes, these standards 3 and 4 are different to standards 1 and 2 just in terms of their layout. So there's very few documents in here, so they just basically trail down the page. So
there's not a lot to do here at all, which is good. Okay, so Jen, there's 4 substandards. Yep. So you'll see them here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you want to just talk us through those, Jen?
Yeah. So there are 4. So safe environment, participant money and property, management of medication, and management of waste. Now, safe environment is pretty much covered. We'll come back to particularly in the risk management section. But that is about, as it would you'd expect, it's about making sure it's a safe environment for both the participant and your team, so that you actually have, there's no risk there. And one of the things in that is that you actually have to make sure that the participant can identify your worker. So we've kind of given an idea about how you might do that if you don't have a photo ID for your team. The second one is participant money and property. So Kate, do you want to just talk about some of the issues that we had with this, with our allied health service?
Yeah, so let's just start with the money. We changed, so we provided in-rooms and community, but we just changed our handling of money as far as invoicing, that there was just no money exchanging hands between the participant and the allied health workers. So we changed processes to get around that one. And then the only time we handled money would have been when an OT was out doing some shopping training or something like that, or transport, travel, training.
Entry to a pool, maybe?
Entry to a pool, those sorts of things. But we would do everything we could to, have full entries prepaid. Was more that whole money handling bit, and thinking of money, I said cash cards as well. If you're assisting them and touching that cash card or instructing them, to tap it here or tap it there. So really making sure we had procedures in place to cover that off. But it was not happening a lot. But then
I think also, can I just one thing that you really need to be asking your team and drilling down, are they never handling money or how much they are? It is often an auditor who finds out that your staff actually are doing things that you didn't know. So it's part of the induction checklist just to talk about this part of it, to make sure that people immediately know what's expected. And it's an annual update as well when you go through the material, just to constantly remind it.
And the other thing you have to think about here as well, because you want your team to tell you if they do have a client participant and they do stop and buy them some milk and bread on the way, because they know that really helps them. And then the participant gives them some cash for it when they get to get there. You really don't want to stop that compassionate, caring relationship happening. That's sort of an informal support, but you need to have a process in place for that.
And that's exactly the sort of stuff that you find out what it is, and then you put in place some systems to manage it safely.
Protect them and protect the participants. So, recording receipts and do that sort of thing. So, so the money was fairly easy once we got our billing and everything, where some people would say they could only pay with cash, but we just stopped that. So that's obviously our non-NDIS participants, but we just put in other procedures. Property, really the only property we were using was, again, probably, the home visits, where if an OT was using the kitchen, and, just checking in. Now, is it okay if we use your Mixmaster today? And just having those sort of verbal consents happening for that. They have consented on their support plan. They signed off the support plan that they're going to be having, at home, mealtime preparation training, something like that. So, it's being discussed at that point. But just having that, okay, if we use this. And I guess that also links back into safe environment as well, Jen. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to wait until...
No, I think it's now.
So, you're getting out there, Mixmaster. Are you doing a visual on... this? Is the cord safe? Do they have a circuit breaker in their home? What's going on there? So your therapist, your allied health professional needs to know what checks they're going to do if they're going to be using electrical equipment in someone's home. It wouldn't work for everything, but our physios did travel with their own circuit breakers. So if they were using a plastosaur or something at home, they've been doing some casting, they would plug the plastosaur into that circuit breaker before, and that would go into
that's a really simple tip to have. It's part of what you would carry around.
But if you have that as a policy, audit is going to go and ask the therapist if they've got one in the car, and then they're going to want to know that it's been tagged. So there's a whole lot of things, and they're going to want to see on your compliance calendar that gets checked off. So it's that whole loop. So think carefully. Don't just go and put things into place that aren't necessary. Think if you need them. So, Jen, I'll just go back.
So the next one is management of medication, and with discussions with the AHPA and our own experience, we thought that this is not an area that allied health are involved in, and so we actually haven't provided a spiel or any information particularly about that.
So really all you have to say in your spiel there is that this is not appropriate, because you've got to remember these are written for care providers as well, so people providing and who are actually...
And I think that's again a bit like the money. Find out from your team, you're not helping Mrs. Abdul actually with their medication when they're there out of a compassionate ground, because if you start doing that, then suddenly you're dispensing medication and there's a whole world of issues that you need to deal with. So there, but you just want to find out so and you can actually handle it, because again, it's not the first time you hear about it. You do not want to be through an auditor.
And there are really easy ways to deal with that. But again, if your team aren't doing it, you don't need these policies. But if they are, you need to address it.
And then the last one is management of waste, and I think that's pretty evident what it is. And I suppose we've sort of written this as with thinking about what the most allied health will require. Not a lot of infectious material or hazardous waste, or not a lot of waste in general, but it's kind of what do you do in rooms, and then to think about what happens in the community. So it's fairly straightforward, but and we're going to now, we're going to come back to have a look at the safe practice and environment policy in risk management and just sort of see what strategies we put in place for that. But I think you'll find there's no new documents in this section at all. So because it's already been covered off in the materials that we've worked on earlier, not just in risk management, but in other areas too.
So down in your downloads for each one, you've just got your standard and your spiel for each of them, but no.
I just said we've left it blank. That's all it's going to say. Okay.
As you can see, not involved in administration or management of any medication for that. Make sure you change it if that's not exactly correct for you. All right, so Jen, do you want to...
So let's go back to the risk management standard, substandard, which is in governance and operational management.
So back to the pathway, certification, governance and operational management.
Yep.
And then
second one down.
Risk management.
So, as you say, as usual, there's an introduction there. But we're going to actually go into the standard and spiel plans. And we want to just talk a little bit about the risk management and the breadth of risk management that NDIS want to see in your system. So, so the standard talks about, says that risk to participants, workers and the provider, so a big, you know, you're looking after the risks attached to your business, are identified and managed. So risk to participants, so there's financial, WHS, safety and risks associated with the provision of supports, which includes like your business continuation, okay, so that you can actually continue to be looked at. And so that they're analysed, prioritised and treated, okay. So, then there's expected a documented system that effectively manages identified risks and it's relevant and proportionate to the size of and scale of the provider. Now, so that means we're going to, as we've said, we're doing it to presenting materials that's relevant to a small organisation.
Yeah, about 6 to 8 allied health, that sort of practice. If you're larger than that, this will be a good starting point.
Yep.
But you're going to have to build on it.
All right. And then it spells out where the linkages need to be. So with incident management, complaints management, work health and safety, HR, so making sure those risks associated with employment are looked at. Information management, so making sure that the material's secure, that you're disposing of it appropriately, and then risks related to governance. Okay, great. So if we just scroll down and we'll just, do you want to just increase the font size a bit? Thanks. Yep. So in the spiel, okay, it talks about the risk management system that you've got in place. And this includes a risk management policy. We're not going to go through that today, but a risk management register, which we will be talking about shortly. Those incidents in the complaints management system, and then a monitoring system with that compliance calendar that we've spoken about in earlier webinars. And then it says, so they're kind of the core part of what we've described as the risk management system, but of course they are actually supported by health and safety and the things that are there. So safe practice and environment policy we're going to come back to. Then the management of injured workers, training, and then those couple of safety checklists, which you will probably come across already, so to be used. And then the risk to individual participants, we've talked about that in previous webinars as well, where we're actually looking at how they're identified, where they're recorded, how they're reviewed, and how they're kind of managed for each individual participant. So there's a document control register, which is part of managing a risk that you've got documents that are different
versions, different documents can cause you a risk.
Yep.
So.
And then having the insurances and then how you're managing your financial and governance risk. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be needing some work on that to determine how you individually monitor these risks, but this sort of is, again, as the spiels are, is what we suggest you include. And then you've got to then adapt the other documents
to it.
So,
Right.
so we're going to now go to the Safe Practice and Environment Policy.
Come down here.
Yep.
We'll read it. The introduction on why we need it, why the auditors like it. And let's open it up.
Let's open that video again, please. Okay. So the index here kind of gives you an idea of the types of risks that we've identified as part of this. And so you can see incidents, accidents, risks and emissions as part of this. Now they kind of link into your incident and complaints management systems and policies, but they're kind of specific things looking at when an incident occurs to a worker or in the course of therapeutic intervention. Safety during community visits, potential high-risk community situations, and having an emergency exit for that. And I think that's a really critical thing for you to have worked through. And that's another area where the more you start talking to your team, and as we've gone to clients, thinking, you know, as you start talking to them, oh yeah, well I got really badly abused by, you know, clients. Some the other day, you've really got to delve down and get people to be reporting this information and to know that when you say, if you feel in the slightest bit unsafe, that you can leave immediately, that they believe.
Yeah, and it is, and really the best way we got around that, and it was a management strategy for us on a risk register, was brainstorming and actually people practicing, you know, in team meetings. You know, we'd put scenarios and then actually have to do it. And the team felt that was really positive training and actually talking and how they would get out of it uncomfortable situation.
Okay. And so the things that you would expect, but we might, just as we go down, so there's strategies for waste management in there.
Number H, yeah.
And above that, infection control. That you might, since we wrote this and it's been loaded up, you know, we'll have all learned a lot from COVID-19. So, you know, you might need to review that for your situation. And then the other part of that that's in there is the last one, protecting participants' property. So we might just have a look at, do you want to look at waste management, Kate? I know that I can So there's kind of you can see just divided up when you start to think about just how much waste you might have. It's more than you often think, particularly community and in rooms. So general waste, contaminated, disposable sharps. They're also interested in how you actually are minimising your environmental impact in the standards. So you've got to think about that. They're all conscious of that, but I find it interesting that they're forcing it upon you in the standards. And this reuse, you know, thinking about the waste, which it's pretty hard to do that now with all the infection control requirements around. We're kind of backtracking on that at a million miles an hour. But, so it's kind of saying what are the things that are expected of you, you know, that this is, you're telling the team this is how you need to manage your waste. And we think that this is going to vary enormously depending on the type of profession that you are and what sort of work you're doing with them. But some ideas for them.
So it is all in yellow, and remembering the yellow means you have to customise it. So these are just ideas that we put in, and you need to
if you don't delete food in therapeutic services, you're just deleting that. Yeah, one less thing to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of, you can see how you've already covered off this in risk management with the documents that we provided, and so it's just a double up and a couple of extra things to think about in Standard 4.
Yeah. Okay, so Standard 4 is covered in risk management.
Yeah.
All right, so with that then, Where would you like to go to next, Jen? Do you want to go to
the risk management register?
Yeah.
Because the risk management register, I think some of you walked through it before. It's a slightly different register to the registers that we've been talking about so far, which is the HR register, the client's calendar, the complaints and incidents register. This one has actually been completed, so it's kind of more like a document that you're working on as a sort of a complete, the form is completed. But I think that just to a few things about this register. So you can see in the table below, it's got the risk category, what the description is. We haven't completed this because this is something you really have to do yourself, like how big a risk is this for your business? If you had nothing in place, if you did nothing to manage the risk having a participant injury or incident, okay? So if you had nothing in place, which you won't, I know, but it's to say how bad could this be? Yeah. And it's going to be a pretty high risk. The next column is about the residual risk. So once you put in place these strategies, how high is the risk? And the advantage of doing that is that you can say, well, if we did nothing, we think that our average rating would be this. And then if with what we've got in place, we're really considerably lowered, what we think the residual risk is.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the strategies. So we might just go down to the matrix that's down the bottom of the register. So there are as many risk matrices around as there are risk consultants out there. Risk management organisations. This is a one. Do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, so I guess you look at your risk and you decide how likely is it going to happen, and is it almost certainly going to happen? Is it very rarely going to happen? So I guess one could be that your clinic, paediatric clinic, might be on a busy corner and you've got children coming and going. Do you allow children to play outside while they're waiting for siblings?
Yeah.
Probably, highly likely that, if they're unsupervised outside, they could run out onto the highway, and that would lead to a critical event, injury. So it makes it a red one, and you've got a critical thing. So you're not going to live with that. You're going to have to put a strategy in place to live with that. You can't have you can't have those red things happening. Then you might have some other ones like a financial risk. If all of your work is with NDIS, how likely is it that NDIS might just stop their service? It's probably pretty unlikely, so you're going to be down the bottom. But if it did happen and all your business is in NDIS, that's not going to be good for you. So it's probably rare, and you're probably going to end up with an yellow, a low risk there. So that just gives
the risk of not getting registered.
Yeah,
changes that altogether. So this is a pretty important exercise that you're going through, and it's important that exercise is you see it in this slide.
Yeah. So you use it for your business risks as well as your physical sort of risks.
Yes. Okay, so now just going back to the top, to the sort of instructions or the background at the top of the form, okay? So these are they're a really good example of how the whole system, the quality management system works, okay? So as we've said, you actually put in place strategies. You've identified the different types of risks, and then it outlines the strategies. Now, these are all supported by more detailed policies and things. So you've actually you've got a conflict of interest policy, you've got a consent policy, you've got more detailed things about how to manage risk. But if you again think about this as a way of going through and quickly reminding people about the risks to the business and to them and to the participants, it's a good induction tool and it's a good reminder for what we've actually got in place. And this, we think that we've given you some ideas, but you probably have other things you're going to be able to add in there. Because once you start to brainstorm, oh no, we also do this, we do that, and you know, it's kind of quite pleasing to see how many things you do, but perhaps you've just never written them down as a specific strategy for managing or, you know, minimising your risks in that area. So have a brainstorm with your team. But the thing about this register is it actually has to be approved by your governing body, however that is, whether it's that group of advisors that are your governing body or her. But these are the things to review it and say, we actually agree with your residual risk rating, or oh no, I think that's too high.
Yeah. We need to do something else.
Yeah.
And you know, and there are some things as well where you might be doing a whole lot of strategies, and the risk is low, and these strategies are costing you a lot of money.
Yeah.
So your accountant, you know, reviewing this might be saying that this, you know, your initial risk rating is really low. You can't. You know, you put all of these things in place, you can't get any lower. You know, are you a bit over the top here?
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you know, it just gets you in a really good place. And there'll be certain parts of your business that you're prepared to take more risk than others. But you're not going to take any risk with your NDIS participants and your team. You know, their health and safety is, you know, paramount,
and that's what this should reflect.
Yeah.
So the other thing is the third point down is it actually spells out just that this helps to guide operations. You've got to allocate somebody to have responsibility for managing the register, right? And who looks after it and who kind of bring it to the team meetings. So you're going to discuss these issues, and it's a good thing to, again, on that agenda you've got a couple of things that should refresh, like you would with the safe practice and environment policy. We're going to today talk about infection control and waste management. Next week we're going to be talking about visiting in the community. Same thing with this, you know, like you tie them together and see how you know, they as a constant refresher. And again, then once you've actually, and you should find, as you kind of get in the swing of this thinking, you'll start to find things and you'll start adding to it. You know, oh yeah, we want to do that, and you'll get to add some extra things to the register. And so these are the things that you can put in straight away, but you again want your governing body to review it on an annual basis and sign off that with the changes that we've had. So at the moment, there's going to have to be a lot of discussion with your governing body with the COVID-19 and what are the risks to your business and how are you going to manage those, given like it looks like it's going to be a long road, so how are we going to try and manage these really critical risks for us and our business and our team.
Yeah. And the other one that you might also be thinking for, I mean, is earlier in the year we had the bushfire emergency as well. So, you know, how do you manage that? Think about the strategies. Team, you know, brainstorm that with your team about, you know, what happens there. Does everyone have a working radio in the car? Those sorts of things.
Yes, and that you've actually got an up-to-date mobile phone. One of the things we always found was we provided a mobile phone to everybody, but people said, oh no, I prefer to use my own. And so then you've really got to have it strictly adhered to. Which number can you always be contacted on when you're working for us? And it created a bit of angst, but this is really important. So to us to be able to know where you are and that we can contact you. But I think it is like just in terms of the very first one, inadequate governance leading to poor or non-compliance and poor quality of services. So that's always going to be, if we have poor governance and poor quality of services, well, that's a really high risk. And so what are we doing about trying to improve our governance?
Yeah.
So is there anything else you wanted to say on
No,
that?
I think that's, really does cover it off. And I guess just from experience is that your team really likes to be involved in this risk identification. We always had it as a standing agenda item at every meeting and asking the team, what, have they had any new risks that they've had to deal with this week? And then, somebody will say something out of the air about either a risk associated with a participant, often a risk associated around driving. But it gave us time to brainstorm and, hear what the other professionals were doing to, because they weren't the only one with that, that situation happening. But they really did like the time spent on this.
And it is, once you start opening up your mind, when we talked yesterday a bit about incidents and complaints, having the idea that having your ears pricked to hear a story and to be able to get people, well, how come this is the first time I'm hearing about this? Not in a nasty way, clearly, but I'm worried about you in that situation. What are we going to do to manage those risks? And that's why they liked it, is because that level of care for their, because a lot of people kind of go, well, that's just the way the business works. Well, what this is saying, it doesn't have to work
like that. And you develop a culture within your organisation around care and, risk management. And it does lead back, because often, Jen, it would be, you'll hear something and then you think, well, there should have been an incident form filled in about this. And it's again, a really good education point on, for them thinking, oh, okay, well, that was an incident. I need to do this, and you can, then put the steps in place to manage the incident.
And after you get over I don't really want to fill out a form, but when there's actually action taken to help them manage those risks, it's see the value of it then.
So, Jen, anything else that we want to?
No, I think this is a good example of for us, Standard 4 and risk management, how, if you've done the work earlier on, makes Standard 4 really easy to
and it is, and I know we've said it before, but sometimes, in Standard 1 and Standard 2, you'll be doing things and you might think this is a bit over the top, but it's other things have been included in it to cover off things down the track. So, we really haven't put extra stuff in just to make extra work. It is there for a reason. So, follow our lead on it and be right. Yeah. All right, well, we'll say goodbye and have a good evening or afternoon, whatever time it is for you guys. And we will see you in the question and answer.
Yeah, and that will be promoted on the AHPA registration support website. So, and when that is going to, because that'll be a live one again, so we can have Q&A, and or talking a bit about preparing for the audit, perhaps. Sort of practical advice of that.
Good luck with it all.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.
Bye.